So when we get to pricing, how does that affect the perspective of potential corporate buyers? Because
that is a really good question.
Because in many cases, when we're selling to consumers, we often jump to low price, but that may not be the right strategy when you're looking at corporate buyers.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. In fact, there's some statistics, and I've done a lot of pricing packages. And in fact, I coach a lot of people that have private coaching programs that they want to sell to corporate companies. And there's a massive mindset shift in terms of pricing when you're making that leap from one market to the other.
Welcome to the Business Builder Throwdown.
That's why people call me. They're like, what do I do? First of all, how are you reading my mind?
With your hosts, Holly Jean Jackson and Matt Rouse. And moderator and referee, D. Scott Smith.
Oh. Yes, it's Thursday. It is time for the Business Builder Throwdown. I am your motivational listener, Scott Smith, and every Thursday with Holly Jean Jackson and Matt Rouse, we are here to throw down. And today it's going to be in support of our friend Anita Russell. And so with that, let's move right into Anita and just say hi.
Excellent. So it's definitely cool to be here. Yes. So my name is Anita Russell. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Professionally speaking, I'm a life coach, a speaker, and an author. And I specialize in creating these brave spaces for personal transformation and conversations about race. So right now, where I am in my life is I have a couple of masterminds that I'm interested in sort of promoting and getting out there and that sort of thing. So right now, that's like the primary focus that I'm working on right now. As I said, I'm an author. I have two independent projects that I publish, and they're out there in the universe and all of that. So that's just a little bit about who I am.
All right. Well, welcome to the Throwdown for this Thursday. It is great to have you here. And Holly, tell us who you are, what's going on in your world.
Absolutely. So this is Holly Jean Jackson, your holistic business coach, and also the host of the Inspiration Contagion podcast. And of course, your co-host on this awesome show, the Business Builder Throwdown. What's going on in my world? I'm super excited to be back with the three of you and excited to help Anita with her business called The Place That Soars, and how we can fill her mastermind classes because they are pretty amazing.
I'm Matt Rouse. I'm the host of the Digital Marketing Masters podcast, as well as the Motivational Success podcast. I run an agency, and I also wrote some books. I wrote Crush SEO, and I wrote Start Saying Yes, and I wrote Flattening the Hamster Wheel, which are all business books that you should read, except for the SEO one, because I wrote it 5 years ago, and now it's out of date. I am excited to help Anita because, number one, I love mastermind programs, and number two, I love winning the throwdown. Today's gonna be my day. I can feel it. It's coming.
All right. Well, I am a big supporter of masterminds. If you want to get ahead, you need to be in a mastermind, and there's a lot of different ones out there. We're going to learn today what Anita has to offer and see what's going to fit for you. But I'm a huge proponent of masterminds. And so, Anita, tell us, what are you doing for promotion, and what's been working, and what do you think you need some assistance with?
So one of the things that I didn't mention that I want to go back to is the name of my company is Place To Soar. And SOAR, SOAR, is actually an acronym for Step Out and Redesign. And the focus is always on you as the client or as the group or the person that I'm working with in any given moment. So there's lots of things that have been going on lately, particularly around the issues of dealing with racism and anti-racism and, things of that nature. And so I actually had a conversation with my family back in June where we came to the realization that in my family, we represented 3 generations of protesting for our right just to exist, that human basic right to just exist in whatever skin we were born in and that sort of thing. So it was, conversation about my mom and her activism, things that I experienced in my, kind of started in my teen years. And then that particular day, my 2 daughters and my nephew, they were going out for a protest, a Black Lives Matter protest in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the question came up. My daughter had just had a baby. His name is Cairo. And so at the time when we had this conversation, he was just about 3 months old. And so the conversation evolved into this thing as to whether or not we thought Cairo was going to have to protest in his lifetime for exactly the same thing. And so somehow that conversation just really, really hit a chord in me. And so my mind just started thinking, and I just started, kind of thinking about what is the role that I want to play in, with Black Lives Matter and protesting and all of that. Because my days of kind of marching in the streets and all of that are gone. So I kind of looked at it from a different perspective. And the perspective that I came up with was activism through coaching. And so how do I have conversations with people or engage people in conversations so they can begin to understand who they are as a member of a racialized society and all of that? Like, what are my thoughts and ideas and beliefs and all of that? And how does that show up? And so I kind of went from that question, what I call the Cairo question, to my second book, Cultivating Change from the Inside Out, The Power of Being Human. I went from that book into this whole entire model that I built around this mastermind for having a conversation about race, but doing it from a coaching perspective. So just kind of helping people to kind of deconstruct themselves and get a sense of where they are, where they stand, and all of this dynamics and all of that. So I'm having a tough time with marketing, maybe because I am not a marketer. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about my work, passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about personal transformation, but I am not good when it comes to the marketing aspect and all of that. So that's why I'm here to kind of get some help on how I can kind of get this out there for individuals as well as corporations and things of that nature.
Well, Anita, I truly resonate with you, and I appreciate that you've kind of taken many different ways to bring light to these issues, prejudice. Just to give you a little background on myself, briefly, so I've adopted my children. So I have children that are African American, and so we have a mixed family. I also am half Mexican myself, so I come from that background. My great uncle was born in Colorado. He was half Mexican, half Native American, spent many years in the civil rights world, and ended up being the commissioner for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for 12 years. So we have some family history around this issue. And so I am really excited to see what Holly and Matt are going to come up with to just help you and get that message, this important message. Because as I know that things have come a long way. When I was born in 1961, if my son and I were together at the same back in those days, we wouldn't have been able to eat at the same restaurants or sleep in the same hotels. And so things have changed, but there is a lot more that needs to be done. So we are excited about helping you with your work. And often we start with Holly, but I'm going to swing over to Matt in this case because he's raring to try to win this one. So
I am raring to go.
We're going to give him some shots right here.
I'm ready. I've been training. I even bought a new shirt.
You're the man of many shirts. We love that.
That's right. And we'll talk about that on Amazon Live sometime. Mm-hmm. So I think the real question of what we're talking about today is it's a very sensitive topic for a lot of people, and it's a very personal subject for a lot of people. And I think it's going to be difficult to convey that to a corporate audience. And that's why I think you want to be selling in sort of a not necessarily a business to consumer sense, like, your person you're reaching out to may also be a business owner or freelancer or something like that. But we want to break it down to an H to H sale, right? Human to human. We want your passion to be conveyed to them. And we also want them to have that personal connection. And so personalization, I think, is vital in your case for selling. And that can be some simple personalization, which could be like getting people on an email list. And when you send it out, make sure that you're sending it and using their name in the address that you're sending to. Make sure that your email is saying, something along the lines of, hey, Anita, I wanted to talk to you today about this topic that's really close to my heart, yada, yada, yada. And, you want to have that, to be able to have that emotional connection with people. And it's really hard to build a relationship with, a corporate HR organization that is going to find people in their company that they think will benefit from a training, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But what I am saying is it's going to be tough to make that connection right away. So that's my first point, is that human to human emotional connection.
I like that. Holly, what's coming out of your brain here?
Yeah, so I agree, human to human, but I think that you can actually have a human to human connection in the corporate world as well. So as you know, on the Throwdown, we advocate for different sides of the marketing spectrum. And today I'm on the side of marketing to corporations. The reason I think this is great for what Anita is working on with her program is we've seen in the news a lot of challenges around race when it comes to Black lives, as well as even Asians, right? And so I know a lot of companies, their diversity and inclusion sections, they're actually looking for people that are experts on this. And they want the leaders at their companies to help their staff better relate to people and get rid of some of these challenges around racism. And they're passionate about activism at a lot of these companies. They really care about giving back to their employee base. They really care about having a company culture that's safe and comfortable for everyone, regardless of their skin color. And so I disagree. I think that selling this and working and building a relationship with the diversity and inclusion arms of specific companies that are advocating for activism, and these tend to be, tech companies or startups or companies that are a little bit more open with their program. They're not going to be older systems or older companies that are more set in their ways. So there are specific types of companies in the corporate space we would want to advocate and work with. But as long as you're networking with people that have a nice warm introduction to these companies and the right people, I actually think you can fill your program incredibly fast. And I think it's going to be just getting that first client in a corporate company. And then it's going to be word of mouth referrals with other companies, and you're going to have the floodgates open up.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're going to end up needing to see is to identify those companies that truly understand that when they train their employees in diversity and inclusion, that it is the best for their company, that it's not just a strategy or a tactic, but that it does make them a better company in many ways. And so with that, Anita, I want to come back to you and just have you kind of talk about what would you see as the outcome that after someone has been, a company or individuals have been through your program, how would the world be better? How would their world be better? And we can kind of go from there and kind of see what kind of messaging we would come up with.
So there's a part of me that agrees with what Matt is saying, because I am, in fact, a coach. And I kind of start off with this one-on-one kind of thing and really help people to kind of deconstruct themselves and get from point A to point B. But at the same time, I also actually have diversity and inclusion in my background. When I was in corporate, I kind of worked in that space. I spent a period of time in HR, and I kind of worked in that space. So I can kind of see from my own experiences what's missing, so to speak. And I think there's a big component of it that's missing. So the answer to the question is that missing piece. How will I address that missing piece, and how will I help people to have conversations around that missing piece? And that missing piece is essentially just talking about race very openly and very honestly, so that people who don't really understand what racism is can hear from somebody such as myself, who brings her own personal experiences into the conversation, who brings, and that's personal experiences, good and bad, my own experiences with people questioning my hair and, all of these different things that kind of envelop me as a Black woman living in America. And so I would hope that my outcome would be this realization that racism and institutional systems don't create themselves, that they actually emerge out of the thoughts and the ideas and the beliefs and the assumptions and all of that of people. And so if I can get people to kind of begin to have open conversations about their own experiences, particularly in terms of their experiences in dealing with the Black community, looking at us kind of monolithically and examining why do you look at me as monolithically as you do, but just kind of helping people to kind of go within themselves and look at racism more from what is inside of you. How is that actually showing up in the world, either as a disruptor of my health and wellness as a Black woman, or something that's contributing to my health and wellness as a Black woman? But I think the key is people understanding what lies within themselves.
This is really good. It was my daughter has helped me along this as well. One of the things that she was saying is that in many cases her friends say, "Bethany, you're my best Black friend." And she's like, "Can I just be your friend?"
One of the things too that Anita has in her wheelhouse is because she is an author and she has these published books. It's a really great way to send a gift to somebody at a company to show that she has that credibility and she's an authority figure. So a way to get your foot in the door is to share something and go the old system of sending mail to someone and following up and actually offering something potentially free initially, like a talk or a workshop for a small group of people. And then after that, what's included with that talk is, 15 minutes with the leaders of that company to give them feedback. And that's where you upsell them into the Mastermind Program. So that's a great way to market and get your foot in the door, especially in the corporate space. And since she already has those books as an author, that's a shoe-in and a simple way to have impact with a lot of people really, really fast to change this, because we could do one at a time in the marketing that way. But from the messaging I'm hearing from Anita and the fact that she has the corporate background, especially in diversity and inclusion, it's going to be really easy for her to sell that there is a gap. She understands what that gap is. She understands the systems. She understands how to solve this, and she has the solution prepared. And it's going to help companies understand themselves better, and not just around racism, but when you start to examine and deconstruct your thoughts and beliefs around just racism to start, it opens up this Pandora's box of all kinds of other assumptions we're making in our marketing and the decisions we make in business, in our personal relationships, and it will have this ripple effect that will positively affect that culture of the company. So that's why I'm saying that we should be going after the corporate companies for Anita's program.
And one of the things that is always an issue, it's a very, very much a challenge. But Holly, before we move over to Matt, I would like to just kind of throw out there some thoughts that you might have about pricing. So when we get to pricing, how does that affect the perspective of potential corporate buyers? Because
that is a really good question.
Because in many cases, when we're selling to consumers, we often jump to low price, but that may not be the right strategy when you're looking at corporate buyers.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. In fact, there's some statistics, and I've done a lot of pricing packages. And in fact, I coach a lot of people that have private coaching programs that they want to sell to corporate companies. And there's a massive mindset shift in terms of pricing when you're making that leap from one market to the other. And that is exactly true. So basically, if you're marketing your program for, I think it's anything less than $10,000, a company is just not even going to look at it because they're going to think that it's just not substantial enough, the quality is not going to be strong enough, etc. And so when it comes to mastermind programming for a corporate company, you actually want to price what it would cost. And you also have to think about support. So let's say a company really loves Anita's program and they want to deploy it to hundreds of employees. Well, we need to have a plan in place for how that would work, how we would scale that, and how we would support that in a way that's going to, really provide amazing customer service that a corporation is going to be willing to pay for. So we have to up-level the customer support, the customer experience, and price it for the quality that a company would expect to receive.
I like that. So Matt, let's go ahead and I want you also, we can talk about this, but also just about this structure that becomes a part of the fabric of these organizations.
I don't think that you exclusively need to sell to individuals or to sell to corporations. But what we are talking about here is what is the best way to grow your coaching program, right? What's the best way to grow your mastermind? And I think small group individual is going to be the fastest way to grow it because for a number of reasons. But I want to, before I get into that, I want to address a few things that were said by Holly. One of those, firstly, is I know this is your favorite part. I don't have a video this time of what you're going to say in advance, like last week. But so I know several people selling mastermind coaching programs to corporations as well as individuals. And what I find is that if you were to take the value that you're selling it for and divide it by the number of people who will take it at the corporation for that price, you're actually getting less money per individual. So even though you may be selling it for a larger chunk of money, the per unit cost is lower. So if you're selling it for $10,000 and they're showing it to 100 people, you're getting, $100 a head, whereas you could be selling it for $300 a head, individually to people. But you're selling it all at once, which is nice. But the second part of that is that if you're selling it to small groups of people who aren't affiliated through a corporation, they become a structure of their own. So that can become a cohesive group of people who went through a very emotional and rewarding experience together as a group. And that builds a community. And when you build a community, they will bring other people into the community with them. And some of those people will work for corporations. Right? So, and this goes to my third point, which is it's really, really hard to get past all the gatekeepers that corporations have for a number of reasons. One of them being they don't usually want to they don't want their employees to find ways to spend more money, right? And another reason is they're getting marketed at constantly for everything you could imagine, right? And so it's difficult to get a foothold in with a corporation. And like Holly had said, maybe you have a book or you're going to do a speaking event or something like that. You could do that just as easily to get individuals as you can to try and reach someone at a corporation. So I think because we're talking about how to grow, the best way to grow a mastermind program, I think that going after corporate clients is hard, and it's easier to get a bunch of individuals first and kind of build your community there. And then later, you will naturally get access to corporations.
In almost every throwdown, it's always both things are great.
True.
So I don't know that we're exclusively saying it's better to go corporate, it's better to go individual. You can do both. However, we only have one Anita. And so, Anita, when you're thinking about this, and you're thinking about the time and the resources that you have to be able to place toward this, which one is resonating with you? Which one do you think you want to finish the throwdown today and start working on right away? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so first of all, there's lots of challenges looking at it from a corporate perspective. And the thing that just popped into my mind when Matt was talking, when he said, you're doing this for 200 people, because the way I designed this based on the coaching model, it would not work with 200 people. So it's not me lecturing, I'm not teaching, it's a lot of dialoguing and conversation back and forth. Otherwise, the deconstruction doesn't work, and all of that. And if that's not an integral part of what I'm doing, then it defeats the purpose of what it is I'm starting out as. So the way I was looking at it from a corporate perspective was just a handful of people. So the way I had it set up, it's basically no more than 10 people at a time. So I would think that would be something that I would really have to emphasize, is that this is not a training program. And that's really the way diversity and inclusion, for the most part, they think of it more in terms of training. This is not training. This is literally changing the way people think in their environment, the way they interact with people. So that whole idea of like a webinar with 200 people, that just, I wouldn't even like pitch it like that, because it just would be a failure in terms of what it is I'm really trying to accomplish. I'm trying to get people to change on a personal level. And that model definitely would not work for me. But then again, I also know, based on my experiences when I was in corporate and some of the programs that I actually put together, and they were programs that only had like 10 people in it, just by design. It's just depending on what it is you want your learning outcomes to be. A big group of people, it often defeats the purpose. Then on the other hand, I also look at it from the standpoint, again, from a coaching perspective, that the one-on-one, in terms of just kind of looking at individuals and getting individuals to kind of participate, that has a lot of value, obviously, also, because it's easier for me then I don't have to worry about necessarily thinking in terms of like big groups of people. Because honestly, right now, in this moment, right now in June of 2021, the idea of big groups of people is a little scary. So I'm thinking just more or less starting with that approach, but using that approach, sort of the one-on-one approach, to feed into how I would do this from a corporate perspective. So I don't necessarily see it as either or, to be perfectly honest with you. I see it as one growing, really, really growing, to help me grow into the next one. That's kind of how it's shaping up in my head.
So Holly, with this kind of in mind, of how Anita is describing the delivery of this mastermind, and still focusing in on the corporates, because we can look maybe at just the leaders. How would Anita be able to do this and help change this thinking?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I wanted to respond to one of Matt's earlier comments around pricing.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. That's right, Matt. So I want to say that you don't necessarily price it to where you're selling it to so many people that it brings the price point to something lower per person for a company versus private. In fact, I've never priced it that way when I'm selling it or helping clients sell to corporate companies. It doesn't work. And then also with Anita wanting to keep this small, that's not a problem. When I say scalable, it could be eventually, if we have a lot of companies that have interest in this and we want to expand it, it could be training more people on leading small groups of the same program so that it is more scalable over time. Otherwise, it's just filling those slots over time and having, 2 or 3 of these per quarter that you can fill for specific companies or teams. And I think it's really about finding those 10 key leaders that have teams where they're really going to dive into the content and dive into it so that when they change and transform, they're affecting their staff. And so it has that ripple effect, whether it's at a company or if you go with the one-on-one approach or, working with just private clients, you can do that as well. Also, with a corporate company, you could even just go after an individual. So you could find a vice president at a company that you already know really well. And you could promote trying to get the company to pay for one-on-one coaching with one single leader at a company. And that would also be a great way to get started, to get testimonials, to have videos and more content to make credibility really easy. And then they could then help you sell it to their company as they've already gone through the one-on-one coaching. So it's always easier to have somebody on the inside helping you. And that could be a different approach you take to get into the corporate landscape.
All right, Matt, and as we're going to wind down here, Anita, we'll come back to you and kind of get your final thoughts on here, and we'll get Matt and Holly to wrap up, and we'll see where we end up on the throwdown today. Matt?
There is one kind of vital thing that we haven't actually said anything about the whole time, and that is how are we going to find the people that we're going to sell to? And I mean, we did have a brief mention of, stages and that sort of thing. However, most people have, just like we went over when we talked about content marketing versus advertising. And Holly's argument was, you need clients now, so you should be advertising. And advertising nowadays is targeting people with specific interests. It's very, very targeted. It's actually targeted on a per person basis. So it's on either a person searching for a specific thing, or you are targeting people of certain demographics and interests. And, that could be a job title. It could be something else. Yes, you can find that with corporate clients, but it's a little more difficult than it is to find individuals, because in a corporation you can't just find anyone in the corporation, right? So I can go and I can target people who are in HR that work for Intel, but that's like 1,000 people, and one of them is the person who's going to be in charge of this project, right? So it's a needle in a proverbial haystack. Whereas finding people who are business owners and maybe also have interests in diversity is fairly simple from a tracking and targeting standpoint on something like Facebook ads or Google ads, right? So it would be a lot easier to target those people through advertising and targeted outreach to communities that already exist. And I think it would just be a more difficult task to try and get corporate clients on board. You know what? I love the idea of corporate clients. And I'm not saying that I would price it differently. I'm saying that in my experience, the people who sell to corporations generally price lower than a per person. And also it does have that, I think there's like a training mindset in companies. Even if you were to do something like a train the trainer, a lot of the information and the passion about the subject can get lost in translation. So it's very difficult to have a train the trainer program unless you've got to be really good at it, right? So I think that if you're going to start out and you're trying to grow your business, that getting groups, tight-knit groups of individuals that have experiences together, or your one-on-one coaching programs, and then maybe moving to small groups after, I think that's definitely going to be the way to go.
Some great information here from both Holly and Matt, and about this important work that you're doing, and activism through your coaching and through this mastermind. And what are your final thoughts before we have each of them sum up, and then we decide which way we're going to go today?
I honestly think that I'm leaning more towards Holly, because the way that last segment and the way that she, it's almost like she created this hybrid between me focusing, the one-on-one to the corporate. So it's kind of like the one-on-one becomes an opening to the corporate. So, for example, one of the things that I'm starting to notice on my LinkedIn, that people who are in diversity and inclusion, I've had people like that kind of reaching out to me, I want to connect with you, and that sort of thing. And these are people who are diversity and inclusion officers or champions or whatever in their particular company. So I kind of see it also from that perspective, in terms of me building relationships with people where diversity and inclusion is part of their work already, and then maybe using that as an avenue to kind of, even if I, like to her point, if I can get someone who would be interested in participating in one of my masterminds and kind of get a sense, kind of from that personal perspective, but then also looking at it from the perspective of how their company could benefit. So I'm kind of leaning in that direction, although at the same time, I'm recognizing how important it is for me to be able to have those one-on-one conversations as well, because that's a part of the whole coaching approach, is having the conversation, having the connection, building the relationship, and all of that. But I'm hoping that all of that would also kind of start to give me openings into corporations. So I'm kind of looking at it from that perspective. But ultimately, that's where I want to be. And I have to think strategically about how I'm going to do that. And again, one of the big issues is the fact that we're moving that mindset around training. So that's where my passion and where I come from as a life coach is going to be really, really critical to drive that point home, that this is not the kind of thing that you train people, because the idea is that people have to change.
All right. So I like this. Holly, the needle is coming your way. So with that, Matt, let's give you one last ditch effort. See what you can do here.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the last ditch effort, but the one thing that as I was saying is you should have a game plan for doing both, right? So you want to be able to sell to individuals. You also want to be able to sell corporations. But I think the really vital part about selling to individuals at the beginning is going to be kind of building up. Here's people who have taken my course. Here's testimonials and videos of them explaining how wonderful your course was. They can be like, I worked with Anita, and, it really, changed my worldview on this topic. And, and then having that, and then getting those people together so that they can have discussions and talks about this kind of stuff and really build a community. And that is such a powerful thing. If you read a book like Seth Godin's The Practice, it talks about how, step one is learn how to do your art, and step two is build a community around it, right? And so when you've gotten to the point where you know how to do your art, right? You know how to connect with people, you know how to get those conversations rolling and help people look inside themselves and all of these things. And I think that is going to be easier for a corporation to to sell the idea to a corporation if that HR, inclusion representative or whoever that person is at the company who's in charge of it, if they come to them and they say, look, this is who Anita is, this is what the program is, here's a couple video testimonials of people who've gone through the course and what they said about it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why you would want to have that one-to-one to start with.
Oh, that was fabulous. That was no last ditch. You did great, Matt. Holly, let's wind it up here. Give us your,
so Anita's already done a beta sample mastermind, so she already has those video testimonials and just testimonials in general. So I think we already have the credibility and the social information we need to sell it to corporate. So here's what I'm thinking. If she already has diversity and inclusion officers from multiple companies already reaching out to her, it seems to me like it's a no-brainer to fill your mastermind with those diversity and inclusion people for your first round. And it's not one company. Then you've got 10 people from 10 companies. And then from there, you can actually upsell them at the end of the mastermind into how you would actually customize a mastermind for 10 leaders at their specific company for the companies that are interested. So it is one-to-one, but it's one-to-one specifically for a company for the right person that's going to help you sell it to that company and scale it from there. So that's the approach I would go with. And it seems like that would be a slam dunk and very easy.
That sounds like Holly's joining my team.
It's still corporate, Matt. It's specifically corporate.
All right. Well, so we've come to the end of the Business Builder Throwdown for today. And I just want to say thank you, Anita, for being our guest, but also for this important work that you're doing. And we are here to support you in any way that we can. And for those of you who are watching who have never experienced a mastermind, well, you just have. This is what a mastermind is. We come together, we open our brains, and we share information, and we look for the best solutions. And so you have just witnessed what you can benefit from by being a part of Anita's mastermind. So we encourage you to learn more about that. So I'm gonna make the judgment. I'm bringing the call down here for which way we're gonna go. And this is an unprecedented day in the Business Builder Throwdown because we were looking at whether we're going to go sell to corporate and try to have an impact on that scale, or whether we're going to encourage Anita to go more individual one-on-one in the mastermind group. Today, we both win. That is, we all win.
It's a tie.
Because I really like this strategy. And I think, Anita, you brought it right down when you said you're looking strategic. And again, as you said, leverage those relationships that you get at the corporate level on the individual, deliver it the way that you're doing it. But with that strategy that you're going to work your way into bringing in those individuals who have the power to influence the culture and thinking and ultimately these structures in the companies. So today, Holly, Matthew, congratulations.
Matt, we had our first baby on the show.
And that's the Business Builder Throwdown, where we discuss marketing and with Holly, Jean, and Matthew Rouse. So.
So my final thoughts are, I totally agree with what the outcome was. And my mind is already going in terms of how I can begin to put my strategic plan together to begin to make this happen. So this was an incredibly valuable experience. And I want to thank Holly personally for inviting me into this space, because this is really, really incredible. So I thank all three of you.
Yeah, thanks, Anita,
Well,
for
thanks.
joining.
Hey, Anita, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to reach you?
They can go to my website, theplacetosoar.com. And that's soar, SOAR, theplacetosoar.com.
Beautiful.
Perfect. All right, everybody.
All right, with that, we will be here every Thursday for the Business Builder Throwdown. Enjoy. Cheers.